Hi there, movie lovers. If Godzilla vs. Kong has been on your mind, you've come to the right place. Released on March 24, 2021. This film is packed with surprises, and today, we're going to break it all down for you. If you're excited to explore more, be sure to like this video. It's a small click that means the world to us. And if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss out on any of our deep dives into your favorite movies. Let's get started. The world had been waiting. Fans had spent years watching the monsterverse expand, building up to a moment that had been decades in the making. A showdown between two of the most iconic cinematic monsters of all time, Godzilla and King Kong. On March 24, 2021, that moment finally arrived, when Godzilla vs. Kong hit theaters and streamed on HBO Max, delivering not only an epic battle for the ages but also a thrilling chapter in the ongoing saga of giant beasts, ancient secrets, and human folly. This was no ordinary film. It was an explosive, high-stakes clash that promised to leave audiences on the edge of their seats. As the opening credits rolled, the first thing you noticed was the grandeur. The film didn't waste time easing into its story. It thrust you into a world where monsters are real, and humanity's attempts to control or understand them have only resulted in chaos. After the events of Godzilla, King of the Monsters, 2019, in which Godzilla saved humanity from the threat of King Ghidorah, the planet had breathed a sigh of relief. But peace was fleeting. Something had triggered Godzilla's wrath. No one knew exactly what, but one thing was certain. The King of the Monsters was back, and he was angrier than ever. From the outset, it's clear that the world is in turmoil. Massive, unprecedented attacks are being blamed on Godzilla, who seems to be wreaking havoc across various cities. It's unsettling, given that, for years, he was seen as a protector, an ancient force of nature whose purpose was to maintain balance. But now, the question lingers. Is Godzilla really the hero, or has something changed? And if Godzilla is no longer the protector, who or what can stop him? This is where the filmmakers drew viewers in, raising a powerful question that would drive the entire narrative. Meanwhile, across the globe, on the mysterious Skull Island, another giant creature, King Kong, was living in captivity under the watchful eye of a team of scientists. Kong, unlike Godzilla, had a sense of empathy, a soul almost. His intelligence and emotional depth made him a stark contrast to the monstrous and often chaotic nature of Godzilla. Yet even Kong, despite his gentler demeanor, was not immune to the looming conflict. As the world panicked about Godzilla's attacks, a new hope was birthed. A plan to transport Kong to the Hollow Earth, a mysterious, ancient realm that held the key to stopping Godzilla. The idea was born out of desperation, but also curiosity. What if Kong, with his connection to the Hollow Earth, could hold the power to understand and even combat Godzilla? Led by Dr. Nathan Lind, a scientist who had studied the Hollow Earth theory, the mission was set into motion. Kong's transfer was no easy feat with the creature's enormous size and raw strength. The logistics were mind-boggling. But what was even more complicated was the emotional weight of what this meant for Kong. He wasn't just a test subject. He was a being with his own desires, his own intelligence, and his own feelings. As the mission began, we were reminded that Kong was not just a monster. He was a living, breathing character in his own right. As the movie unfolded, it became clear that Godzilla vs. Kong was not just about two monsters fighting each other. Sure, that was the spectacle, the grand draw for the fans who had long waited to see the two iconic creatures face off. But beneath the surface, there was so much more to the film. It was about what these creatures represented, about humanity's desperate need to control the uncontrollable, and about ancient forces that had been lying dormant for millennia. There was a grand, underlying narrative about power, raw, unrelenting power, and the consequences of that power when it's left unchecked. From the moment Kong was set loose on the world, navigating the chaos of human-built structures and the vastness of his new environment, the tension between the two beasts was palpable. Their destinies were set to collide, but how and why would that happen? Would Kong and Godzilla simply duke it out in an endless battle of strength, or was there something deeper at play? These questions set the tone for what was to come, and the answers, when they finally arrived, were as surprising as they were thrilling. The story continued to escalate as the battle between the two titans drew closer. The Hollow Earth expedition led by Dr. Lind and Dr. Eileen Andrews, played by Rebecca Hall, who cared deeply for Kong, unearthed ancient truths, secrets that had been hidden for eons. These discoveries hinted at something far greater than just the Titans themselves. It was as if the entire Earth had been engineered to house these colossal beings, and the balance of the world was at stake. As the human characters unraveled the mysteries of the Hollow Earth, audiences were treated to breathtaking visuals, jaw-dropping action sequences, and moments that felt almost mythological in their scope. The film's visual effects were nothing short of stunning, bringing to life landscapes that were simultaneously alien and familiar, vast, neon-lit caverns where gravity seemed to bend, creatures that were both majestic and terrifying, and an atmosphere that conveyed the sheer power and ancient age of the world below the surface. But even more exciting than the discovery of Hollow Earth was the growing tension between Godzilla and Kong. The two monsters were destined to meet, but the path to that collision was winding and full of suspense. Would Kong be the hero? Would Godzilla finally be the villain he appeared to be? Or was there some third party manipulating the two monsters for their own agenda? The first fight between the two was everything fans had hoped for. It was a brutal, savage battle where the raw strength of Kong collided with the atomic-powered fury of Godzilla. The cityscapes were destroyed, and each blow landed with earth-shattering force. It was a spectacle that felt like an arena for gods. But as the fight raged on, it became clear that this wasn't just a contest of strength. It was a battle of wills, of survival, and of legacy. Each beast fought not just for dominance but for their very existence in a world that had seemingly turned against them. And just when you thought you knew where the story was headed, the plot took a sharp turn. The true reason behind Godzilla's attacks was revealed in an unexpected twist, one that connected not just the Titans but the human characters to a much larger narrative. What seemed like a straightforward battle between two monsters was, in fact, a much more intricate chess game, with a hidden enemy pulling the strings. The climactic battles were beyond anything anyone could have anticipated. From the chaotic fight in the urban jungle of Hong Kong to the stunning conclusion in the depths of Hollow Earth, every moment was amplified with intensity and stakes. What was once a fight for dominance between two creatures turned into a fight for survival against a greater threat, one that neither Godzilla nor Kong could have foreseen. The film's final act was an emotional rollercoaster, pulling on the heartstrings of the audience while delivering the kind of action and drama that blockbuster fans crave. The revelation that neither creature was truly the enemy was both surprising and satisfying, reinforcing the movie's deeper themes about the dangers of assuming what we don't understand. Godzilla and Kong, despite their differences, were bound by a shared purpose, and the moment when they teamed up to face the true enemy was a scene that would be etched in the minds of viewers for years to come. In the end, Godzilla vs. Kong wasn't just a fight between two monsters. It was a story about power, legacy, and the way the world can shape the creatures that roam it. The film's surprises, its grand action sequences, and its emotional depth made it more than just a spectacle. It made it an unforgettable cinematic experience. As the credits rolled, fans were left in awe, knowing that the world of the Titans was far from over, and that there were even greater mysteries waiting to be uncovered in the shadows of the monsterverse. The year was 2024, a time when the world had barely begun to recover from the global chaos caused by Titans, immense, ancient creatures whose very presence reshaped the planet itself. Godzilla, once the world's greatest threat, had somehow become a symbol of protection. But that delicate balance was now shifting. It was as if the Earth itself could no longer withstand the weight of these behemoths, and neither could humanity. It had been 5 years since the battle between Godzilla and King Ghidorah. 5 years since the king of the monsters had stopped an alien invasion, and in doing so, saved the world. The world had breathed a sigh of relief. But that peace was fragile, held together by a thin thread, and the unexpected return of Godzilla's rage had shattered it. In the quiet, peaceful stretch of an island far from civilization, King Kong lived in isolation. The island had been called Skull Island, a place filled with dangers that only the most seasoned explorers could comprehend. But for Kong, it was home, a refuge, a sanctuary where he could roam free from human interference. That was until the scientists came. Dr. Eileen Andrews, a renowned primatologist who had studied Kong from the moment he was discovered, was one of the few who truly understood the beast. She knew he wasn't just a monster. He was a creature of intellect and emotion, capable of feeling and reasoning in ways most people couldn't fathom. Kong wasn't the terrifying, mindless force that people thought of when they imagined a giant ape. He had depth, and that was something few could see. The humans who ran Kong's containment operation weren't interested in understanding him. To them, Kong was a tool, a means to an end. He was being kept in a vast, steel-enclosed dome, far removed from the chaos of the world, under the supervision of a government agency and private corporations. Kong had been promised freedom, and for a while, he believed it. But the island was no longer his to protect, not when human interests were involved. The film's opening moments set the stage in a somber, quiet way. There were no immediate screams, no explosions. Instead, we were introduced to Kong in the first frame, a giant, towering figure, his massive chest heaving with each breath. He stood near the center of a massive compound, encased in a steel dome that stretched high into the air. Around him, the world felt muted, like the calm before a storm. The wind rustled through his fur as he gazed out at the horizon, his gaze distant but filled with a quiet longing. Kong wasn't a prisoner in his mind. He was merely waiting. The island was far away, out of reach, and the world beyond was unknowable. Inside the control room, Dr. Andrews watched over him, her heart heavy with the knowledge that this was not a life for him. She had come to know Kong intimately over the years, his fears, his instincts, his unique ways of communicating. And yet, despite the bond they shared, she could see the weight of captivity on his shoulders. He was not built for confinement, and the walls were beginning to close in on him. But something much bigger was about to change the course of both their lives. The world outside had begun to unravel. Unexplained attacks across the globe had thrown everything into chaos. At first, it was hard to pinpoint what was causing the destruction. There was no pattern, no warning. Cities were hit seemingly at random, and all the evidence pointed to one thing: Godzilla was back. But this was not the Godzilla of old. This was a Godzilla consumed by something far darker, an uncontrollable rage that nobody could understand. His attacks were not isolated, they were strategic. They seemed to target industrial sites, military installations, and other places tied to the world's growing reliance on technology and power. In response, a coalition of governments and scientific organizations scrambled to find answers. Among them was Dr. Nathan Lind, a geologist who had spent years studying the hollow Earth theory, a concept that posited that beneath the Earth's crust, there existed a vast, unknown world, teeming with life. Lind believed that if they could unlock the mysteries of the hollow Earth, they could uncover not only the source of Godzilla's fury but perhaps the key to stopping him. But Lind's theories were considered radical. Many of his colleagues dismissed him as an idealist, someone chasing after a fantasy. However, Lind's passion was undeniable, and his conviction to find answers was unwavering. He approached the world's authorities with a bold proposal. They needed to take Kong, the only living being who might have a connection to the hollow Earth, and send him there. It was a desperate plan, but Lind believed Kong held the key to understanding not just the origins of Godzilla, but perhaps the nature of the Titans themselves. There were rumors, whispers of ancient texts and forgotten histories, that suggested the Titans were not simply random creatures of destruction. They were part of something far larger, a purpose older than human civilization itself. Kong, Lind believed, could provide answers. Dr. Andrews, though reluctant, knew this was the only way to protect Kong from the growing chaos outside. Kong wasn't safe in the compound anymore. Not with Godzilla's unrelenting rampages. As the film progressed, the world's increasing panic about Godzilla's attacks took center stage. The news reports, the military mobilizations, the desperate cries for help from citizens caught in the devastation. They were all signs that things were spiraling toward an irreversible conflict. Godzilla's mysterious behavior raised several questions. Why was he attacking? Was he defending something? Or was he responding to a threat? The human characters, including Madison Russell, a young woman who had survived the events of Godzilla, King of the Monsters, became involved in the investigation. Her connection to the earlier conflict made her an unlikely, yet invaluable, ally. She, along with her friend Bernie, a conspiracy theorist who had long suspected that there were hidden forces manipulating the Titans, uncovered clues that pointed to something far deeper. They discovered a hidden organization, a corporation that had been conducting experiments with the Titans, trying to harness their power for their own gain. But what was their true agenda? The answer lay buried beneath layers of secrecy. The world was edging closer to a confrontation between Godzilla and Kong, but the humans, too, were about to become pawns in a much larger game. As Kong was prepared for his journey into the unknown, and as Godzilla's wrath seemed to intensify, the humans began to realize that they were only scratching the surface of a conflict that had been brewing for millennia. Subtle hints of the impending twists began to surface. The Hollow Earth, that mysterious realm that Kong was being sent to explore, wasn't just a physical place. It was a repository of ancient knowledge, a world untouched by the surface world for eons. As Lind, Andrews, and their team ventured deeper into the mystery of the Hollow Earth, they began to realize that the Titans were not merely creatures of destruction. They were a part of the Earth itself, ancient guardians of a power far greater than anything humanity had ever known. Meanwhile, Kong's journey into the Hollow Earth was anything but simple. The further he went, the more he uncovered about his own origins, about a hidden history that tied him directly to the planet's ancient past. And as Kong made his way through the massive, subterranean caverns of the Hollow Earth, he was met with dangers unlike any he had faced before. Giant creatures, monstrous predators, and strange forces pushed him to his limits. Yet there was an underlying sense that Kong was not just fighting for survival. He was fighting for something much bigger. Godzilla, however, was still on the surface, waiting. He knew that Kong was coming, and that confrontation was inevitable. The stage was set for a battle that would shake the very foundations of the Earth. But who was truly in control? Was Godzilla merely a protector, or was something else driving his fury? The closer Kong got to the heart of the Hollow Earth, the more it became clear that the answer to this question lay deep beneath the surface of the world, and that the truth, when uncovered, would change everything. And so, the story moved toward its inevitable conclusion. A showdown between two forces of nature, each with its own legacy, each with its own purpose. Yet, even as the final battle loomed, there was still the question of who the real enemy was. Was it Godzilla? Was it Kong? Or was it something much darker? Something that had been lurking in the shadows all along? The seeds of the story had been planted, and now, all that was left was for the world to witness the collision of titans. A clash of legends, driven by forces beyond their comprehension, and a story that would shape the future of both monsters and humans alike. The world had been waiting for this moment. A fragile peace had been shattered by Godzilla's unexplained attacks, and now, with Kong nearing the heart of the Hollow Earth, all eyes were on what would come next. What began as an uneasy alliance between human science and the mysterious power of the Titans had spiraled into a high-stakes race against time. The tension was palpable, the stakes higher than anyone could have imagined. As Kong ventured deeper into the Hollow Earth, the sheer magnitude of the world below was slowly revealed. Towering mountains, floating islands, and massive caverns carved by time. This was a place untouched by humanity, a realm where the very laws of nature seemed to bend and twist. Yet, despite the wonder and awe of these discoveries, there was a lurking sense of danger. Kong wasn't just exploring the unknown. He was searching for something that might hold the key to saving both him and the world from the chaos Godzilla was unleashing. But as Kong reached the heart of the Hollow Earth, his journey became something far more personal. Deep within this strange new world, Kong discovered an ancient temple, hidden from the surface world for centuries. Inside, the walls were covered in carvings, depictions of the Titans, of ancient creatures who had once roamed the Earth, and of Kong's own kind, revered and worshipped as guardians of the planet's natural order. It was here that Kong found his true legacy, his connection to the very core of the Earth itself. His ancestors had once fought side by side with the Titans to protect the world from a force that threatened to tear it apart. This knowledge, buried beneath the surface, revealed that Kong was not just a lone creature. It was his destiny to play a pivotal role in balancing the power of the Titans. As Kong stood in the ruins of the ancient city, the realization hit him. He wasn't just fighting for survival. He was fighting for the survival of all life on Earth. But just as the weight of this truth settled over him, A roar shattered the stillness. Godzilla! The king of monsters had found his way into the hollow earth, drawn by some primal instinct, a force of nature that could not be ignored. The titans were about to clash, and this time, it wasn't just about strength. It was about the fate of the world. The two giants met at the entrance to the ancient temple. Kong, having tapped into the power of his ancestors, was no longer the confused creature who had been lured from Skull Island. He was a king in his own right. But Godzilla, with his raw atomic power, was no mere rival. The earth itself seemed to tremble as the two titans collided. Their massive bodies collided with earth-shaking force, each blow sending shockwaves through the ground. The scale of their battle was beyond anything the world had ever seen. Cities in the distance felt the aftershocks, and the sky itself seemed to darken as the battle raged on. But it wasn't just about brute strength. In this fight, there was a deeper struggle, the struggle for dominance. Yes, but also the struggle for understanding. Each strike seemed to carry more weight than the last, each movement a reflection of the monster's deep, primal instincts. Kong fought not just for himself but for the balance of nature, for the survival of the planet that had long been his home. Godzilla, on the other hand, fought for something far older, a legacy tied to the very energy that powered his atomic breath. The two titans were not just battling each other. They were battling for the future of all life on Earth. As the fight escalated, something began to shift. The power of Godzilla's atomic breath was overwhelming, but Kong, armed with the knowledge of his ancestors and the ancient weapon he had uncovered within the hollow earth, fought back with a ferocity that matched Godzilla's. He wielded the strength of his forebears, a force that had once protected the Earth from unimaginable threats. The power of the hollow earth surged through him, amplifying his every move. Yet, despite his newfound strength, Kong struggled to match Godzilla's sheer destructive power. The two titans were locked in a battle neither could easily win. But then, as the final moments of their clash neared, an unexpected twist emerged. The very force that had driven Godzilla to attack, the mysterious power that had been manipulating him, was revealed in full force. A hidden organization, one that had been secretly controlling both titans for their own purposes, was behind the chaos. They had been using Godzilla's rage to test the limits of their technology and were now manipulating the titans for their own ends. The realization hit with the force of an explosion. Godzilla had not been attacking for no reason. He had been responding to a deeper threat, one that threatened not just him, but all life on Earth. The revelation shook Kong to his core. He understood now that the battle was not just between him and Godzilla. It was a battle against something much greater, a hidden force that sought to control the titans and, ultimately, the planet itself. With this newfound understanding, the tide of the battle began to turn. Kong, fueled by his ancestors' power and the knowledge he had gained from the hollow earth, joined forces with Godzilla in a moment that no one could have predicted. The two titans, once bitter enemies, now faced a common foe. The human characters, realizing the true scope of the conspiracy, worked alongside the monsters, uncovering the true motives behind the attacks. The corporation that had been manipulating the titans, intending to use them as weapons to control the world, had underestimated the power of the creatures they sought to control. They had underestimated Kong and Godzilla. In a stunning sequence, the two titans fought together to take down the true enemy. Their combined might was unstoppable. Godzilla's atomic breath cut through the air, while Kong wielded his newfound strength, his fists pounding the ground with the force of earthquakes. The hidden organization, which had thought itself untouchable, was brought to its knees. The titans, once enemies, had become allies in a battle for the survival of the Earth. And as the dust settled, the world was left to reckon with the aftermath. Godzilla, having destroyed the corporation's final stronghold, let out a mighty roar. It was a triumphant sound, but one that carried the weight of what had been lost and gained. Kong, standing beside him, looked on, his chest heaving with the effort of the battle. The two creatures stood in silence for a moment, as if acknowledging the deep bond they now shared. Their fight was over, not because one had won, but because they had realized that they were part of something much larger than themselves. They had fought not for domination, but for the balance of nature, for the survival of all life on Earth. As the film drew to a close, the resolution was bittersweet. The world had witnessed the unimaginable. Two titans coming together to protect the planet, not as enemies, but as allies. The human characters, who had been caught in the midst of this struggle, were left to reflect on the true nature of the creatures they had once feared. Kong and Godzilla had not been mere monsters. They had been forces of nature, ancient beings whose power transcended human understanding. And as the credits rolled, the world was left to wonder. What next for the Titans? With the hidden organization dismantled, would Godzilla continue to protect the world, or would his role change? Would Kong return to the Hollow Earth, or had he found a new place among the stars? The future of the Titans was uncertain, but one thing was clear. They were not simply creatures of destruction. They were protectors, guardians of a world much older than humanity had ever known. The story of Godzilla and Kong wasn't over. It had only just begun. The resolution, though satisfying, left the door open for new mysteries to unfold. The Titans had emerged victorious, but the legacy of the monsters, and the world they inhabited, was far from finished. The Earth was still their domain, and the humans who shared it would have to learn to coexist with these ancient beings, forever changed by the Titans' incredible, unstoppable power. In the massive, towering shadows of Titans, where monstrous roars echo across devastated landscapes and the Earth itself trembles beneath the weight of ancient creatures, the characters in Godzilla vs. Kong are more than just spectators to the spectacle. They are the hearts of the story, the ones who give depth and context to a narrative that spans the gap between the fantastical and the real. And it's through their eyes, their motivations, and their growth that the colossal battles take on true meaning. At the core of this human-centered narrative is Dr. Eileen Andrews, portrayed with quiet strength by Rebecca Hall. From the outset, Andrews is introduced not as a mere scientist caught up in a monster fight, but as someone deeply connected to her subject, Kong. There's a tenderness to her performance, a deep empathy for the massive ape that speaks volumes without needing much exposition. Her journey is not one of just scientific discovery but also emotional growth. Her relationship with Kong is rooted in the understanding that he is not a monster to be controlled, but a creature with a consciousness and agency. In a world dominated by power struggles and ancient beasts, Andrews represents the voice of reason, a figure who believes that humanity's relationship with the Titans should be one of respect, not domination. Her motivations are clear and relatable. She's driven by a desire to protect Kong, but not in a conventional, possessive sense. She recognizes Kong's innate intelligence, his emotional complexity, and she feels responsible for him. Her understanding of Kong's captivity, and her reluctance to see him trapped again, fuels her decision to accompany him on the mission to Hollow Earth. Her character's growth is subtle but meaningful, as she faces the harsh realities of a world where monsters, like humans, must fight for their survival. She learns that her bond with Kong isn't just about keeping him safe. It's about realizing that Kong's autonomy and his place in the world are as vital as her own. Hall's performance shines here, managing to convey a powerful mix of maternal care and scientific curiosity without veering into sentimentality. In contrast, Nathan Lind, played by Alexander Skarsgård, is a man driven by an unshakable belief in the Hollow Earth theory, a belief that has made him a pariah in the scientific community. Where Andrews is grounded, Lind is idealistic, almost to a fault. He is the dreamer, the one who refuses to accept that the world has all the answers. He's motivated by a combination of ambition and desperation, and as the film progresses, we learn that his personal history, the loss of a brother to the cataclysmic events caused by the Titans, informs his drive. Lind's faith in Hollow Earth represents both hope and folly. Hope that the Titans are not just harbingers of destruction but are part of a larger cosmic order, and folly in underestimating the dangers of a power so ancient and uncontrollable. Lind is a man in search of redemption. His flaws aren't just intellectual, they are emotional. He makes the mistake of believing that the Hollow Earth holds the answers to mankind's survival, unaware of the darker, more complex forces at play. But as the story unfolds, Lind's arc becomes one of learning. His belief in scientific rationale and logic is tested by the very creatures he has studied. Over time, Lind comes to realize that the world doesn't fit into the neat boxes of human understanding. He's forced to reconcile his idealistic theories with the raw reality of what the Titans represent. Forces of nature that exist beyond the comprehension of human minds. Skarsgård brings a restless energy to Lind, imbuing him with an intellectual fervor that occasionally borders on obsession, but which ultimately transforms into a more grounded, if wary, respect for the creatures who have altered the course of human history. But it's not just the main characters who lend the story its emotional texture. The supporting cast also plays pivotal roles in shaping the narrative. Madison Russell, played by Millie Bobby Brown, is one such character whose role might have seemed secondary but whose journey becomes central to the understanding of the monster conflict. Madison's arc is particularly significant as it ties the human and monster worlds together. As the daughter of Dr. Mark Russell, a scientist who once worked to understand the Titans, Madison has lived through the chaos the creatures bring. Yet, unlike many others who fear the Titans, she has a deep fascination with them. This is a girl who has seen the destruction, yes, but she has also seen the saving grace of Godzilla in King of the Monsters, and her belief in the possibility of coexistence shapes her actions. Madison is motivated by a desire for truth and justice, a determination to understand why Godzilla is attacking. She refuses to accept the surface-level explanations that the world gives for his violent behavior. This leads her to Bernie Hayes, a conspiracy theorist played with a comedic yet heartfelt energy by Brian Tyree Henry. Bernie is an intriguing character in that he provides both comic relief and genuine insights. A former Apex security guard, he harbors suspicions about the organization's true intentions, and his knowledge of the corporate world makes him an invaluable ally to Madison. His character provides the moral center of the story for much of the film, guiding Madison through the labyrinth of lies and conspiracies. Bernie's arc, while secondary, is thematically important, as it represents the individual's struggle for truth in a world ruled by manipulation and power. Yet, perhaps the most compelling relationship in the film is the evolving dynamic between Godzilla and Kong. The movie sets them up as natural enemies, two titans vying for supremacy. But as the story progresses, the emotional undercurrent of their interaction becomes clear. While they are initially positioned as rivals, the true depth of their connection lies in their shared struggle to maintain balance in a world that does not fully understand their existence. For all their power and destruction, both monsters are pawns in a much larger game. Kong, the ancient protector of the Hollow Earth, is revealed to be far more than a primal force. He is the last of his kind, a king without a kingdom, and his journey is one of reclaiming his place in a world that has forgotten him. Godzilla, meanwhile, is driven by a sense of duty and protection. His attacks on humanity, seemingly unprovoked, are a response to a hidden threat that is revealed in the final act. The true enemy is not Kong, but a powerful organization that seeks to control the Titans for their own gain. Their final confrontation, and eventual uneasy alliance, becomes an exploration of power, duty, and sacrifice. It's the quiet moments in between the battles, the moments when Kong gazes at Godzilla not with hatred, but with recognition, that make the climax of the film so emotionally resonant. These two titans, both shaped by ancient forces and human hands, come to understand that their struggle is not one of dominance, but of survival. And through their fight, they emerge not as enemies but as reluctant allies, fighting together for the future of a world that has wronged them both. The performances of the actors help to elevate these characters beyond the spectacle of giant monsters. They imbue each human character with a sense of depth, whether it's the quiet wisdom of Dr. Andrews, the idealism of Nathan Lind, or the fierce determination of Madison Russell. Millie Bobby Brown, in particular, proves her range as she steps into the role of Madison, delivering a performance that blends the curiosity of youth with the tenacity of a survivor. Brown is able to balance the humor and emotional weight of her character, making Madison not just a supporting player, but a key figure in the narrative's development. Rebecca Hall's portrayal of Dr. Andrews is grounded, filled with empathy and an unspoken connection to Kong that becomes the emotional backbone of the film. Her character is a foil to the brashness of Nathan Lind, and her quiet resolve brings a sense of stability to the chaos unfolding around them. Meanwhile, Alexander Skarsgård's Lind is the quintessential outsider, a scientist who is willing to risk everything for the pursuit of knowledge, even when that knowledge is wrapped in danger. These characters, working alongside the Titans, serve as the emotional anchors in a story that could have easily been consumed by its visual effects and monster battles. They are the ones who remind us that beneath the colossal scales and roars, there are stories of loss, survival, and the unyielding will to protect what we love. And it is through them, through their journeys, their motivations, and their growth, that Godzilla vs. Kong becomes more than just a battle between giants. It becomes a story about understanding our place in a world that is far older and more complex than we could ever imagine. The monsters may dominate the screen, but the humans help to tell the real story. Making Godzilla vs. Kong was no small feat. The towering titans, the destruction on an unimaginable scale, the futuristic technology. The film was a massive undertaking that required both technical wizardry and an enormous amount of human creativity. The world of these iconic monsters was shaped not only by the CGI artists who brought them to life but by a passionate, dedicated team working behind the scenes to make every aspect of the movie as immersive and visually stunning as possible. From secret Easter eggs that nod to the franchise's long history to the intricate design choices that turned these colossal creatures into living, breathing beings on the screen, the production of Godzilla vs. Kong was a careful balance of artistry, logistics, and technological innovation. One of the first hurdles the production team faced was the scale of the film itself. Unlike any other blockbuster, Godzilla vs. Kong required a unique approach to both visual and narrative scale. The two titans, each towering over 100 meters, needed to feel massive but also grounded in the reality of the world they inhabited. Special effects supervisor John Daigle and his team had to devise a way to make these giants seem as real as the human characters they interacted with. This wasn't just a battle of monsters. It was about making their world feel tactile, as if audiences could step into it themselves. The challenge was in creating a seamless integration between the CGI titans and the real-world environments. Each scene had to feel as though it belonged in a cohesive universe where the monsters were not just added in but truly existed within the landscape. To achieve this, the filmmakers used a combination of motion capture, scale models, and innovative camera work. In the case of the battle sequences between Godzilla and Kong, every detail had to be meticulously choreographed to ensure the monsters interacted with each other, and with their surroundings, in ways that felt both grounded and epic. Every punch, every roar, had to be believable, even as the creatures defied the laws of physics. A particular point of fascination among fans and film buffs alike was the decision to craft Kong's movements with a level of expressiveness not typically seen in CGI-rendered creatures. Kong, unlike the other titans, needed to carry emotional weight. He wasn't just a mindless force of nature, he had character. Andy Serkis, the legendary motion capture actor known for his role as Gollum in The Lord of the Rings and Caesar in Planet of the Apes, had worked extensively to bring Kong to life in Kong, Skull Island, 2017, and his influence continued to be felt on set. Serkis' expertise in bringing out the emotional depth of motion capture characters inspired the filmmakers to infuse Kong with nuances, like his expressive eyes and his highly coordinated movements. These were decisions that ensured Kong was not just an ape, but a character with thoughts, feelings, and an undeniable presence. But of course, it wasn't just Kong that required careful thought. Godzilla, the longtime king of the monsters, had his own set of challenges. The filmmakers wanted to retain Godzilla's classic look, his distinct features, like his spiky dorsal fins and wide, reptilian eyes, but at the same time, they wanted to update his design to make him feel fresh and dynamic. The VFX artists worked tirelessly to perfect Godzilla's movements and expressions, but it was also critical to maintain the essence of the original creature. Every roar, every step, had to be true to the monster's legacy while ensuring that he could also stand toe-to-toe with Kong in terms of visual grandeur. In fact, the design of both monsters was a collaboration that spanned multiple studios, including the visual effects teams at MPC, Moving Picture Company, and the design department at Legendary Entertainment. The final result was a marriage of old-school monster designs with the cutting-edge technology of the 21st century, giving the creatures the stature they required for the epic showdown. Yet, it wasn't all just about digital magic. On set, the creative teams worked hard to ensure that the human elements, too, were able to connect with the monsters. The giant sets and models built for key scenes were a triumph of traditional filmmaking. Many of the environments Kong and Godzilla inhabited were created using enormous practical effects, including massive sets of hollowed-out buildings or futuristic cityscapes that were later combined with CGI. In a scene where Kong battles Godzilla in a densely packed urban environment, the filmmakers used real-scale models to help actors visualize the size and scope of the creatures they were interacting with. The sets were often larger than life, bigger than any set before them, and actors had to imagine themselves interacting with titans while maintaining an emotional connection to the story at hand. Adding another layer of complexity were the various locations and environments Kong and Godzilla would explore throughout the film. The movie's setting spans a variety of locations, from the sprawling, high-tech Apex facility to the lush, visually stunning Hollow Earth. Creating these worlds required unique approaches. The Hollow Earth, for example, was designed to feel otherworldly, with floating islands, massive subterranean landscapes, and bizarre, alien creatures. The filmmakers drew on the idea of a vast, hidden ecosystem beneath the Earth's crust, using it as a canvas for wild, imaginative visuals. To bring the Hollow Earth to life, the team used a blend of digital art and practical effects. Large portions of the Hollow Earth were designed using virtual environments, but the team also worked with physical models to give the scenes a sense of weight and tactility. The juxtaposition of ancient environments with the futuristic, technologically advanced world above ground helped provide a visual contrast that elevated the stakes. And then, of course, there was the technology behind it all. The sound design in Godzilla vs. Kong was crucial, not just to sell the massive presence of the monsters, but to create the emotional atmosphere of the film. Sound designer Eric Ardal and his team took inspiration from previous films in the franchise but sought to give the Titans more personality through their roars and growls. Godzilla's iconic screech was tweaked to make it more resonant, primal, and menacing. Kong's roar, while less frequent, was crafted to evoke more humanity, an attempt to make the audience empathize with him even in his most ferocious moments. The soundscape played a huge role in shaping the tone of the film, reinforcing the idea that these creatures were not just giants. They were forces of nature, with a language all their own. The film's musical score, composed by Tom Hokenborg, better known as Junkie XL, also added another layer to the cinematic experience. Hokenborg's approach to the score was one of contrasts, highlighting the tension between the two titans with sweeping, aggressive orchestration, and then pulling back with quieter, more introspective moments that focused on Kong's emotional depth. The music never became overpowering but instead complemented the action, helping to build suspense in key moments, such as the first full reveal of Kong's new home in the Hollow Earth. The score itself became an integral part of how audiences perceived both Kong and Godzilla, as monumental beings whose struggles were not just physical, but emotional, internal, and cosmic. Among the more interesting behind-the-scenes tidbits were the subtle Easter eggs scattered throughout the film. These weren't just nods to the long history of Godzilla and Kong films, but also references to the larger cinematic universe that Legendary had crafted with the Monsterverse. Fans of the franchise would have been quick to spot some of the more obvious callbacks, like the classic skull of a long-dead kiju visible in one scene, hinting at Kong, Skull Island's rich history of mythical creatures. And while the film centered on Kong and Godzilla, there were references to other titans, both past and future. The presence of hidden references to other legendary kiju added layers to the narrative, giving audiences a sense of anticipation that the battle between these two monsters was merely a part of something much larger. There were also moments on set that highlighted the playful nature of the film's making. The filmmakers often injected humor into the process, especially when it came to interactions with the monstrous stars. The motion capture teams frequently interacted with the actors and animators in light-hearted ways, using their own creativity to build a sense of camaraderie on set. The actors, too, would joke about their characters' feats of strength, especially when it came to Kong's larger-than-life presence. While the stakes in the story were dramatic and intense, behind the scenes there was a sense of fun that helped balance the serious tone of the film. And perhaps one of the more profound aspects of the production was the way the filmmakers approached the philosophy of the Titans. While it may seem simple to design two creatures to simply fight each other, there was a deeper narrative at play that needed to be carefully crafted. The filmmakers were mindful that Kong and Godzilla represented more than just two monsters in conflict. They were symbols of balance, forces of nature whose existence could never be fully controlled. Their struggle wasn't just physical. It was ideological, a reflection of the film's larger themes of conflict and coexistence. This deeper narrative thread influenced the way the creatures were treated on set, both in terms of their visual design and how they were portrayed in the script. In the end, Godzilla vs. Kong became more than just a massive battle royal between two iconic figures. It was a testament to the efforts of hundreds of artists, designers, and technicians who worked tirelessly to bring these beloved creatures to life. With a blend of practical effects, digital magic, sound design, and emotional depth, the film offered a true cinematic spectacle that honored the legacy of these two titans, while also pushing the boundaries of what could be achieved on screen. Each choice, each decision, from the roar of Godzilla to the detailed scale of the Hollow Earth, was meticulously crafted to create a film that wasn't. From the very first frame of Godzilla vs. Kong, it is clear that the film is not simply a battle between two titans, but an exploration of much deeper themes that resonate with the very core of the human experience. While the monsters themselves represent overwhelming power and the natural forces of the world, the moments that truly define the narrative and give the story its emotional weight are those in which the human characters are tested, by the titans, by their own flaws, and by the forces they struggle to comprehend. Each pivotal moment in the film carries a profound thematic resonance, creating an emotional undercurrent that heightens the impact of the spectacle. One of the most powerful sequences in the film comes early on when Kong is revealed to be living in a vast, artificial dome on Skull Island, having been isolated from the outside world for years. It's a moment that encapsulates one of the central themes of the film, captivity and freedom. Kong, the king of Skull Island, a creature once free to roam the vast expanse of his home, is now confined to a small, artificial space. His movements are constrained, and his interactions with the humans who care for him, Dr. Eileen Andrews and the rest of her team, are defined by a sense of caretaking, but also an understanding that Kong's life is limited by these physical walls. This is more than a scene of exposition. It's a subtle commentary on the themes of captivity, power, and what it means to be free. Kong, a creature of immense power and intelligence, is constrained by the same forces that drive much of human society: the desire for control, the fear of the unknown, and the overwhelming need to keep what we cannot fully understand in check. The choice to present Kong in such a vulnerable, caged position immediately humanizes him, making him more than just a beast to be feared. He is a victim of circumstances, a king without a kingdom, and his emotional journey from this moment of captivity to his eventual freedom is one of the film's most important narrative arcs. As the film progresses, Kong's journey to Hollow Earth becomes not just a quest for survival, but a symbolic journey of reclaiming his heritage, his agency, and his true place in the world. The Hollow Earth sequence itself is one of the film's most breathtaking moments, both visually and thematically. When Kong enters this vast, hidden realm beneath the Earth's surface, it's more than just a new setting. It's a visual representation of the idea that there is always more to discover beneath the surface. In many ways, Hollow Earth mirrors the inner worlds of the characters, a space that is full of possibilities, but also dangerous and fraught with challenges. The revelation that Kong is the last of his species, the guardian of this hidden world, offers him a sense of purpose and meaning that he had lost in his years of isolation. The film uses the physical journey into Hollow Earth to illustrate Kong's personal and emotional evolution, from a captive animal to a sovereign being reclaiming his legacy. It is a moment of empowerment that resonates with a universal theme: the search for identity and the struggle to understand one's place in the world. This theme of identity is also central to Godzilla's arc. While Kong's journey is one of rediscovery, Godzilla's storyline is defined by the relentless duty he feels to protect the Earth. In one of the film's most intense moments, Godzilla attacks a major city without provocation, creating mass destruction and chaos. On the surface, it seems as though Godzilla has simply become a destructive force once again, as he has in previous films in the franchise. However, as the story unfolds, it becomes clear that Godzilla is not attacking randomly. He is responding to an unseen threat. This moment, where Godzilla's motives are questioned, taps into the theme of perception versus reality. Godzilla is a protector, but his actions are not always understood or appreciated by those he is trying to safeguard. He embodies the tension between heroism and villainy, a creature whose actions are both necessary and misunderstood. For viewers, This sequence carries a deeper emotional weight because it forces them to reconsider their assumptions about the Titans. The monsters are not merely forces of nature to be feared or destroyed, but complex beings whose actions are driven by instincts that humanity often cannot comprehend. Godzilla's attack, which initially seems senseless, ultimately reveals itself to be part of a larger pattern of protection, setting the stage for the film's emotional and thematic climax. As the two titans finally come face to face in the film's iconic battle sequences, the emotional stakes of their conflict become more than just a physical struggle for dominance. The battle between Godzilla and Kong is a visual spectacle that leaves audiences breathless, but it is also an emotional confrontation that is as much about survival as it is about understanding. The clash between these two creatures, each so powerful and yet so vulnerable in their own way, represents the eternal struggle between opposing forces: strength and intelligence, nature and technology, freedom and control. Each strike between them is a reminder that while these monsters may be titans in physical size, they are also symbolic representations of larger, more universal themes. When the fight between Kong and Godzilla reaches its peak, it is not just the visual spectacle that resonates, but the emotional undercurrent of their struggle. Both creatures are fighting not just to defeat the other, but to assert their right to exist in a world that seems intent on defining them according to human standards. Kong fights to reclaim his legacy, to establish his place in a world where he is the last of his kind. Godzilla, on the other hand, fights not out of malice but out of a deep, inherent sense of responsibility to protect the Earth. The moment when Kong, battered and blooded, finally yields to Godzilla, is both a physical defeat and an emotional surrender. It is the culmination of Kong's arc, the moment when he understands that his survival does not have to come at the cost of another's destruction. It is the emotional crux of the film, a battle that shifts from one of conflict to one of coexistence, with both titans realizing that their destinies are intertwined in a world that is too big for any one creature to control. Perhaps the most emotionally resonant moment in the film occurs after the battle between Godzilla and Kong, when the two creatures, exhausted and battered, come to a tentative understanding. Rather than the expected final clash, the film opts for a quieter, more poignant moment: Godzilla's roar of victory, followed by Kong's weary acknowledgement of his own strength. It is a moment of mutual respect, not only between the two monsters, but also between the humans who have witnessed their struggle. In the film's final moments, when Kong is given a place in the hollow earth, free from the constraints of captivity, it serves as a reminder that true power lies not in domination, but in finding balance. It's an emotional moment that speaks to the broader thematic elements of the film: survival, freedom, and the importance of understanding. Kong's quiet gaze into the distance, his peaceful settling into his new home, is a moment of personal resolution that speaks volumes about the journey he has undergone, from a captive beast to a sovereign ruler of his world. Throughout Godzilla vs. Kong, the filmmakers carefully balance action and spectacle with emotional depth. The fight scenes, while thrilling and awe-inspiring, are never just about the destruction they cause. Each punch thrown, each roar, and each moment of tension contributes to the film's deeper themes of identity, freedom, power, and coexistence. What begins as a battle for dominance evolves into a story of mutual understanding, highlighting the complexity of both the monsters and the world they inhabit. These key moments, from Kong's journey to reclaim his heritage to Godzilla's misunderstood role as protector, are what give the film its lasting impact. They elevate the movie beyond a simple kiju brawl and make it a story about creatures struggling to find their place in a world that has no clear answer for them. In the end, Godzilla vs. Kong is a film about more than just two giants clashing. It's about the larger forces at play, both on screen and in the hearts of those who watch. The emotional stakes, the themes of survival and respect, and the slow-burning narrative of coexistence are what turn this monster movie into a story that resonates long after the final credits roll. The making of Godzilla vs. Kong was an immense endeavor that required not only a vast array of technical expertise but a unique blend of artistry, vision, and sheer innovation. Behind every stunning visual, every powerful roar, and every meticulously crafted scene was a team of filmmakers, designers, and technicians who worked tirelessly to push the boundaries of cinema. At its core, the film is an ambitious cinematic event, a fusion of cutting-edge technology, intricate visual storytelling, and deeply emotional moments, all brought to life by an unrelenting commitment to detail and craftsmanship. From the way the camera moves to the sound that reverberates through each massive battle, the technical choices made in Godzilla vs. Kong were central to its success. One of the most notable aspects of the film is its cinematography, which, in many ways, plays just as crucial a role as the visual effects in bringing the story to life. The camera often takes on an almost tactile quality, moving fluidly through the massive set pieces to convey both the scale of the Titans and the intimate moments of human connection. In the vast, urban landscapes where the battles take place, the camera doesn't simply observe. It becomes part of the action, often darting between the crumbling skyscrapers or sweeping across the ruined streets, capturing the destruction from every conceivable angle. This fluidity of movement, led by cinematographer Ben Serrazin, creates an immersive experience, one where the audience feels as if they are in the midst of the action, caught between the titanic struggle and the human fight for survival. It's a deliberate choice to blend epic spectacle with personal stakes, to emphasize not just the power of the monsters but the emotional impact their battles have on those caught in the crossfire. But it's not just the grandiose shots of massive creatures that define the film's visual style, it's also the subtle moments. One of the most striking sequences in the film is Kong's journey to Hollow Earth, where the lush landscapes and towering rock formations evoke a sense of wonder and danger. The cinematography in these quieter moments focuses heavily on the exploration of space, showing Kong as a solitary figure in an immense, alien environment. The visual contrast between the dark, stormy skies of his captivity and the glowing, vibrant colors of Hollow Earth creates a visual narrative of freedom and discovery, marking a key point in Kong's arc as he begins to reclaim his place in the world. In these moments, the camera lingers on Kong's expressive face, capturing not just the awe of his surroundings, but the raw emotion that drives him. The decision to make Kong's movements more nuanced and humanized is reflected in how the camera often focuses on him in close-up, bringing his inner world to the forefront. Serrazin's camera work also plays a critical role in how the film conveys the size and scale of the Titans. Early in the production, the filmmakers knew that they needed to make the massive size of Godzilla and Kong feel tangible, as if they were truly inhabiting the same world as the human characters. A crucial technique used to achieve this was the concept of scale shots, moments where the camera purposefully frames the monsters next to everyday objects or characters to highlight their enormous size. This is especially evident in scenes like the one in which Kong is transported via ship across the ocean. The camera juxtaposes the colossal ape with the tiny human vessels around him, making it clear that this is a world where the rules of physics are often upended. The effect is breathtaking, not just visually, but in how it heightens the tension between the creatures and the humans who are helpless in their presence. While cinematography was key in shaping the look and feel of the film, the sound design played an equally important role in amplifying the emotional and sensory experience. Sound designer Eric Ardal, who had previously worked on films like A Quiet Place and Transformers: The Last Night, was tasked with creating a sonic landscape that could match the sheer magnitude of the Titans and the visceral power of their clashes. From the rumbling roars of Godzilla to the thunderous steps of Kong, every sound in the film had to feel earned, intentional, and significant. The creative decisions regarding the sound design were crucial to making the Titans feel like they were part of the environment rather than just digital creations. The filmmakers were keen to make Godzilla's roar more than just a noise. It had to be a sonic force that would shake the very foundation of the world in which the monsters existed. The iconic sound was tweaked and layered to make it more primal, guttural, and raw, evoking a sense of ancient power. Similarly, Kong's roar, while less frequent, was designed to be deeply emotional, almost human in its expression. It was less about the volume and more about the tone, a cry of defiance, of vulnerability, and of strength. In addition to the Titans' roars, the film's score, composed by Tom Hokenborg, better known as Junkie XL, complemented the sound design in crafting the emotional undercurrent of the story. Hokenborg's music has always been a hallmark of his ability to blend aggressive, high-energy rhythms with subtle, emotional undertones, and Godzilla vs. Kong was no exception. The music in the film was not only a driving force behind the action but a narrative tool that helped shape the emotional journey of the characters. In the final battle sequence, for instance, the music ebbs and flows with the tides of the fight. The intense, high-octane moments are underscored by sweeping orchestral themes that evoke a sense of grandeur and scale. But as the battle slows down, as Kong and Godzilla begin to find common ground, the music shifts. The electronic beats that had defined the action sequences transform into a more serene, reflective melody, mirroring the film's thematic shift toward coexistence. Despite the vast reliance on visual effects and cutting-edge technology, there was an intentional effort to maintain a sense of physicality in the monster's movements. Much of this was achieved through motion capture technology, particularly in Kong's scenes, where the team relied on motion capture artists to give the creature a sense of agency and expressiveness. Andy Serkis, whose work as Caesar in the Planet of the Apes trilogy had revolutionized motion capture performance, was instrumental in bringing Kong to life. While Serkis did not physically portray Kong this time around, his influence was felt throughout the production as he consulted with the animators and actors to ensure that Kong's movements retained their humanity. The choice to make Kong's motion capture more nuanced than the typical hulking, monster-like movements of traditional kiju was a bold one, but it paid off in spades, giving Kong a distinct personality that set him apart from the more typical, mindless forces of destruction seen in other films. The visual effects team, led by the experts at MPC, Moving Picture Company, also had to take into account the practical constraints of creating such large-scale creatures. While much of the work was done in post-production, the team used a variety of practical techniques to create a sense of tangibility. One notable decision was the use of real-scale models to help the actors interact with the creatures, even in scenes where the monsters were not physically present. For example, during the fight sequences in the city, large-scale models of buildings and sets were used to give the actors a better sense of their surroundings, helping them to react more authentically. These models also helped the visual effects team better integrate the computer-generated creatures with the physical environment, ensuring that the monsters' movements felt grounded and in harmony with the world around them. The interaction between human and monster characters was another aspect that required careful thought. The filmmakers were adamant about making sure that the humans, despite their smaller scale, felt like they were integral parts of the story and not just spectators to the spectacle. This meant that while the Titans were the central figures, the human characters' emotional journeys had to be just as compelling. Director Adam Wingard made a conscious decision to place human characters like Dr. Nathan Lind, played by Alexander Skarsgård, and Dr. Eileen Andrews, played by Rebecca Hall, in situations where their emotional investment and motivations directly affected the events around the monsters. The success of the film hinged not just on the believability of the monsters, but on the believability of the human story woven into it. Behind every major creative decision was a commitment to making sure that the film felt cohesive, even as it pushed the boundaries of what was technically possible. For instance, the filmmakers spent a great deal of time figuring out how to make the massive fights between Godzilla and Kong not just a series of punches and kicks but a meaningful conflict, one that carried emotional weight. The team used a combination of motion capture, traditional animation techniques, and CGI to create fight choreography that was both dynamic and grounded in the physical realities of two titans battling it out. They wanted the audience to feel the impact of each hit, the weight of each monster's movement. The collisions felt like they had consequences, not just on the characters involved, but on the world itself. Ultimately, the success of Godzilla vs. Kong lies not just in its ability to dazzle the audience with spectacle, but in the careful attention to detail and the technical decisions that allowed the filmmakers to tell a deeper, more resonant story. Every frame, every roar, and every fight was carefully constructed to not only entertain but to evoke emotions and challenge the audience's perception of these legendary creatures. The film's seamless blending of cutting-edge technology with emotional depth is what makes it a landmark in modern blockbuster filmmaking, an achievement that will likely inspire generations of filmmakers to come. Beneath the towering battles of Godzilla vs. Kong lies a deep and rich tapestry of themes and symbolism that elevate the film far beyond its kiju spectacle. While audiences may have come for the larger-than-life confrontations between two iconic titans, what lingers long after the final roar is the subtle, yet profoundly human, narrative embedded within the story. At its heart, Godzilla vs. Kong is more than just a clash of monsters. It is a story about power, identity, survival, and the intricate dance between the forces of nature and humanity's attempts to control them. Through its characters, its monsters, and its breathtaking visuals, the film weaves together a profound exploration of these themes, imbuing the otherwise explosive action with a quiet, introspective undercurrent. One of the most overt themes of the film is the idea of power, not just in its destructive sense, but in its deeper, more nuanced forms. Godzilla and Kong are not merely powerful creatures because of their size or strength, but because they represent forces far older and more primal than humanity. Godzilla, often perceived as a wrathful force of nature, is more than a creature driven by violence. His actions, though seemingly destructive, come from a place of protection, a responsibility that stretches back to the very origins of the planet. He is the guardian of Earth, a defender against threats that humanity is ill-equipped to understand or combat. In this sense, Godzilla embodies the theme of power as a duty. His destructive actions are not born out of malice but out of a necessity to keep the world in balance, even if his actions aren't always understood by the humans around him. Similarly, Kong, though different in nature and behavior, carries his own complex relationship with power. He is an animal, yet one who is far more in tune with the world around him than most would expect. His immense strength is tempered by a vulnerability that humanizes him in ways that Godzilla, in his primal existence, does not exhibit. Kong's power, while considerable, is not in his ability to destroy, but in his ability to connect, to the humans who care for him, to the environment that nurtures him, and to the hollow earth, the hidden world that holds the key to his past. His power, in this sense, is one that is linked to his identity, the power to reclaim his legacy, to find his place in a world that has pushed him aside. His arc is less about proving his strength and more about understanding who he is, where he comes from, and where he belongs. This theme of power as identity is intricately tied to the symbolism of the film. Kong's journey, especially in the scenes where he ventures into the hollow earth, is rich with symbolic meaning. Hollow earth, as a concept, is a visual and thematic representation of the idea of origin. A place where Kong can reconnect with his heritage, his species, and the deeper aspects of his being that have been hidden or forgotten. It's not just a physical location but a metaphysical space where Kong can come into his own, rediscover his true nature, and embrace his destiny. The glowing, vibrant world beneath the surface represents not just Kong's birthplace but the untapped potential that lies within him, an idea that parallels the universal human search for meaning and belonging. In this subterranean world, Kong is not just an animal. He is a king, a ruler of an ancient, lost civilization. The hollow earth sequence, in its bold, otherworldly beauty, offers a visual metaphor for the journey of self-discovery, where Kong, lost and isolated for so long, can finally understand his place in the world. In contrast, Godzilla's arc, though equally rich, explores a more existential form of power. His role as a protector, as the guardian of Earth, is not one that can be easily defined or understood. His power is the power of natural order, a force that transcends human comprehension. While Kong's journey is about reclaiming his identity, Godzilla's is about ensuring the survival of the planet, no matter the cost. His actions are driven not by the need to understand himself, but by a cosmic responsibility to keep the world in balance. The symbolism of Godzilla, particularly his association with the primal forces of the Earth, reinforces the theme of nature's will, an unstoppable, often incomprehensible force that humans can neither control nor escape. Godzilla's fight against Kong is not just a battle between two creatures, but a clash of philosophies, one that seeks balance and order, Godzilla, and one that seeks freedom and self-realization, Kong. The clash between these two titans also serves as a metaphor for the relationship between humanity and the natural world. As much as Godzilla vs. Kong is about the titans themselves, it is also about the humans who interact with them, who try to understand them, and who often find themselves at the mercy of forces far greater than their comprehension. This relationship is complex and fraught with tension. The human characters, such as Dr. Eileen Andrews and Dr. Nathan Lind, represent humanity's attempt to understand, control, and sometimes exploit the titans. But in their desire to harness the power of the monsters, they often overlook the deeper, more mysterious forces at play. The human desire for control, embodied by the corporate interests and military factions in the film, is a reflection of humanity's long-standing struggle to dominate nature, to bend it to our will. Yet the titans are forces that cannot be fully controlled, and the film emphasizes that despite our technological advances, there are powers in the world that will always transcend human authority. This tension between human agency and the uncontrollable forces of nature is symbolized through the architecture of the world in which the Titans exist. In the urban battlegrounds of cities like Hong Kong, where much of the final confrontation between Godzilla and Kong takes place, the buildings and infrastructure stand as symbols of human ambition. The skyscrapers represent human ingenuity, our desire to build, to create, to assert our dominance over the natural world. Yet, in the moments when the Titans clash against these structures, the fragility of human creation becomes painfully clear. The city is destroyed in moments, reduced to rubble as the Titans engage in their battle. The towering buildings, once symbols of human accomplishment, become insignificant in the face of the immense power of nature. This destruction is not just physical. It is symbolic of the limitations of human ambition when confronted with the forces of the natural world. However, in this chaos, there is a strange beauty. As the Titans battle through the urban landscape, we are reminded of the delicate balance between civilization and nature, between power and fragility. The film does not present the destruction as a nihilistic force, but as an inevitable part of the cycle of life. The monsters, in their struggle, are both creators and destroyers, symbols of the raw power of nature, but also of the endless capacity for renewal. The very act of destruction brings with it the possibility of change, of rebirth. This theme is emphasized in the final resolution of the film, where Kong, having found his place in the hollow earth, represents the possibility of renewal, of moving beyond destruction and finding peace. The theme of survival also runs deep throughout the narrative. Both Godzilla and Kong are creatures of immense power, but their survival is not guaranteed, and their battles with one another are not merely about dominance but about survival in a changing world. For Kong, the struggle for survival is deeply personal. He is the last of his kind, a king without a kingdom, and the journey to Hollow Earth is one of reclaiming not just his identity, but his place in the world. For Godzilla, the struggle is more existential. He is not fighting for survival in the traditional sense, but for the survival of the planet itself. His battles, though often destructive, are acts of preservation, preserving the natural order, keeping the forces that threaten the planet at bay. The two Titans, though seemingly at odds, are united in this fundamental drive to survive in a world that is constantly shifting beneath their feet. In a film that could easily be seen as a simple monster movie, these deeper layers, these themes of power, identity, survival, and the relationship between humanity and nature, imbue Godzilla vs. Kong with a sense of gravitas. The monsters are not just titans to be revered or feared. They are representations of the larger, uncontrollable forces of the world. They symbolize the forces that humanity, for all its advances, cannot fully understand or conquer. Their struggles are our struggles, our quest for meaning, our desire for control, and our recognition of the fragile nature of our existence. Through these monsters, the film speaks to the eternal dance between creation and destruction, freedom and control, survival and extinction. Ultimately, Godzilla vs. Kong is a film about much more than two creatures battling for supremacy. It is a meditation on the power of nature, the complexities of identity, and the endless cycle of life and death that defines all living things. By weaving these themes and symbols into the fabric of the film, it transforms from a spectacle into something far more profound, leaving audiences not just awestruck by the massive battles, but deeply moved by the quieter, more human moments that echo throughout the narrative. The monsters, in all their power and glory, are reflections of the world we inhabit, vast, unknowable, and full of hidden depths waiting to be discovered. The journey of Godzilla vs. Kong was as colossal behind the scenes as it was on the screen, with a dynamic cast, dedicated crew, and a fervent fanbase that eagerly anticipated the release of this epic showdown. From the first days of pre-production to the final weeks of post-production, the collaboration between the cast and crew shaped the film into the cinematic spectacle it became. As much as the movie thrives on the titanic battles between two iconic monsters, its success owes just as much to the chemistry of the human characters, the creative vision of the filmmakers, and the passionate reactions it ignited in audiences and critics alike. At the heart of the human storyline were the performances of a talented cast who, despite being dwarfed by the sheer size of the monsters around them, brought their characters to life with warmth, conviction, and a touch of humor. The film's primary human characters, Dr. Nathan Lind, played by Alexander Skarsgård, and Dr. Eileen Andrews, played by Rebecca Hall, formed the emotional backbone of the story. Both actors embraced their roles with a deep sense of purpose and commitment, providing the audience with characters who were not just caught up in the chaos of the monsters, but were grappling with their own personal stakes. Skarsgård's Nathan, a scientist driven by the mysteries of Hollow Earth, was both intellectual and empathetic, while Hall's Dr. Andrews was a protective figure, especially toward Kong, whose bond with her character was as emotionally grounded as it was poignant. Skarsgård and Hall's interactions on screen showcased a chemistry that felt real and grounded, giving their characters the sense of urgency that propelled the narrative forward. Their performances were all the more impressive given the extraordinary circumstances they were working under. Much of their work was done against green screens, with the massive creatures and sets built digitally in post-production. This meant that Skarsgård, Hall, and the rest of the human cast had to rely on their imaginations and the guidance of director Adam Wingard to bring the action to life. There were moments on set when the actors would be reacting to nothing more than the creative descriptions provided by Wingard, or sometimes to large markers on the ground indicating where Godzilla or Kong would appear in a scene. Despite these challenges, both Skarsgård and Hall spoke in interviews about the surreal nature of working on a project of this magnitude. For Skarsgård, one of the standout moments came when he and his co-stars were asked to react to a looming, invisible Godzilla. "You just had to imagine this thing was bigger than anything you'd ever seen," Skarsgård said in a candid interview. "It's a challenge, but one that also stretches your creativity. You're reacting to something that's larger than life, but you still need to make it feel real." Rebecca Hall, who plays the motherly figure to Kong, also noted how much she connected with her character's emotional depth. "Kong is not just a monster," she remarked, "he's a character with emotions, with desires, with needs, and Eileen represents that bond, that understanding of him as something more than just an animal." Hall's connection with Kong, brought to life by state-of-the-art motion capture and animatronics, was so genuine that her performance added layers of humanity to the Kong-Godzilla narrative. The juxtaposition of the massive beasts and the emotional stakes tied to Kong's journey brought a distinct richness to the film's emotional core, and Hall's sensitive portrayal of Eileen served as a key emotional anchor throughout the movie. But beyond the central characters, the ensemble cast, including Millie Bobby Brown, Kyle Chandler, and Brian Tyree Henry, brought an additional layer of energy and humor to the film. Brown, reprising her role as Madison Russell from Godzilla, King of the Monsters, brought an infectiously fiery energy to the role, teaming up with Henry's Bernie Hayes, a conspiracy theorist, to uncover the mysteries surrounding the conflict between Godzilla and Kong. The duo's dynamic provided a welcome lightness to the film's more intense sequences, and Brown and Henry played off each other with an easy camaraderie that made their scenes entertaining and engaging. "Millie's energy on set was contagious," said Henry in an interview. "She's got this youthful enthusiasm that's infectious, and it really made the scenes we shared feel grounded, even though we were dealing with a world-ending scenario." Kyle Chandler, returning as Madison's father, Mark Russell, also had a quieter, more somber role, reflecting the gravity of the human stakes in the film. His character's internal struggle with his previous experiences in the monster world gave Chandler a unique role, one that required a balance of skepticism, concern, and reluctant acceptance of the Titan's place in the world. Chandler's performance was subtle, but essential to portraying the broader philosophical undercurrent of the film. The tension between mankind's desire for control and the raw, uncontrollable forces of nature represented by the monsters. His journey mirrored the audience's own, caught between awe, fear, and ultimately a reluctant respect for the Titans. Though the performances of the human cast were crucial in anchoring the film's emotional moments, the real stars of Godzilla vs. Kong were, of course, the Titans themselves. The process of bringing these legendary creatures to life was an immense undertaking that spanned years of visual effects work, motion capture, and sound design. Director Adam Wingard, who was known for his genre expertise with films like The Guest and Blair Witch, embraced the challenge of making the creatures feel not just monstrous but alive, imbuing them with agency, purpose, and emotion. Wingard, in multiple interviews, spoke about how the Titans were more than just vessels for destruction. They were characters in their own right, with their own emotional arcs. Godzilla and Kong aren't just fighting for supremacy. They're fighting for survival, for identity, for place in a world that's changing around them, Wingard explained. This vision was reflected in how the monsters were portrayed, not just as forces of nature, but as beings with intentions, motivations, and personalities that resonated with the audience. The visual effects team, led by the experts at MPC, took Wingard's vision and made it a reality, using groundbreaking motion capture and digital animation to give Kong and Godzilla fluidity and depth. The decision to focus on the expressive qualities of Kong was a particularly noteworthy choice, as it set him apart from the more stoic Godzilla. Kong's body language, his gestures, and even his facial expressions were all carefully crafted to give the audience a sense that they were witnessing a creature who, despite his terrifying size, was also capable of compassion, frustration, and vulnerability. Motion capture artists, guided by Andy Serkis, one of the pioneers in performance capture, were instrumental in translating Kong's movements into something human-like, capturing the soul of the character through his physicality. For Godzilla, however, the challenge was creating a creature that felt powerful and ancient, but also one whose actions were fueled by something deeply instinctual. His movements were often slow, deliberate, embodying the weight of an ancient creature who understands his place in the world, but whose actions are nonetheless devastating in their impact. As the film neared its release, the excitement surrounding Godzilla vs. Kong was palpable. Fans of both franchises were eager to see these two titans square off, but there was a broader anticipation too. The film represented not just a clash of monsters, but the culmination of years of storytelling in the monsterverse. The film had its world premiere on March 24, 2021, and within hours, the internet was buzzing with reactions. Fans on social media gushed about the spectacle, sharing their favorite moments from the battles, dissecting the details of the Hollow Earth sequence, and discussing the surprising moments of character development. Many were quick to highlight the film's unexpected emotional depth, particularly the connection between Kong and the human characters, and the heart-pounding moments of action that balanced out the quieter, more reflective scenes. Critics, too, were largely impressed with the film's ability to blend spectacle with emotion. While many praised the jaw-dropping visual effects and the sense of scale that made the monster battles feel immersive, others were taken by the film's thematic undercurrents. Some critics lauded the film for being a fitting conclusion to the monster arc that began with Godzilla, 2014, and Kong, Skull Island, 2017, with others noting that it managed to provide a satisfying narrative without losing sight of the fun. In many ways, wrote one critic, the movie feels like a love letter to fans who have spent decades watching these monsters. It doesn't shy away from the spectacle, but it also doesn't forget to make you care about the characters involved. While some critics found the human storyline a bit too thin, many agreed that the film's pacing and visual thrills kept the momentum strong, delivering on its promise of a monster brawl while weaving in just enough emotional resonance to elevate the action. The lasting impact of Godzilla vs. Kong is best summed up in the way it captured the imagination of its audience. The film offered a perfect blend of spectacle and emotion, of monster battles and character-driven moments, all while never forgetting what made these creatures so legendary in the first place. Behind the massive battles and stunning visuals, the film was the product of a passionate collaboration, one that brought together a talented cast, a visionary director, and a skilled crew to deliver a cinematic experience that resonated with fans and critics alike. Godzilla vs. Kong transcended the boundaries of its genre to become more than just another blockbuster spectacle. It evolved into a cultural milestone that captured the collective imagination of fans worldwide. From the moment it roared into theaters and onto streaming platforms, it not only set new benchmarks for the kiju genre but also solidified its place in the broader cinematic landscape. The film's legacy is an intricate tapestry woven from its breathtaking visual achievements, its exploration of iconic mythologies, and its resonance with a global audience in an era shaped by both nostalgia and modern anxieties. Over time, the movie's impact has rippled out in ways that suggest its influence will last for years to come, affecting how films are made, how audiences engage with blockbusters, and how the very nature of spectacle cinema evolves. One of the most obvious ways Godzilla vs. Kong left its mark on cinema is in its influence on visual effects and the technological advancements that helped bring the film to life. The movie was a testament to what could be achieved when cutting-edge technology and artistic vision are merged in service of pure spectacle. With the advent of motion capture and CGI so sophisticated that Kong's nuanced emotional expressions and Godzilla's menacing movements felt almost tangible, Godzilla vs. Kong pushed the boundaries of what audiences thought was possible in terms of digital animation. The scale and dynamism of the battles between these two iconic titans were unlike anything seen before, with the camera moving fluidly around the action, pulling audiences into the heart of the chaos. This sense of immersion wasn't just a feat of technical wizardry, it was a carefully crafted storytelling tool. The visual effects team used light, shadow, and perspective not only to enhance the physical spectacle but to highlight the emotional stakes behind the monsters' fights. Every punch, every city-leveling blow, was not just an impressive display of raw power but a way of communicating the inner turmoil and tension that drove the characters, human and titan alike. This blending of technology and narrative gave the film an immediacy and power that resonated with contemporary audiences. Godzilla vs. Kong was more than a mere extension of the monsterverse. It was a cultural touchstone that spoke to the moment in which it was made. Released in the midst of a global pandemic, the film provided a much-needed escape for audiences around the world. For many, it represented the first major cinematic event in a year when theaters had largely been closed, and moviegoing had become a rare, almost sacred experience. While streaming services had gained ground during the pandemic, Godzilla vs. Kong marked a new chapter in how studios viewed simultaneous theater and digital releases, signaling the future of blockbuster distribution. The film's success on both the big screen and HBO Max was a testament to its wide appeal, showing that audiences were eager to experience epic films in whichever way was most accessible to them. The movie also stands as a milestone in the kiju genre, marking a moment of synthesis between the old and the new. Godzilla's origins as a symbol of post-nuclear anxiety in 1950s Japan are well documented, and Kong's rise as the tragic beast of King Kong, 1933, likewise rooted the character in a cultural context. Godzilla vs. Kong honored those legacies while bringing them into the present day, giving both creatures a platform to exist in a new world where the fears, desires, and challenges of modern humanity shaped their stories. In the past, kiju films were often about nature's wrath or mankind's hubris, with the monsters serving as allegories for man's destructive power. However, Godzilla vs. Kong reimagined these creatures, not just as forces of destruction, but as beings with their own agency, driven by internal conflicts and survival instincts. Godzilla, traditionally depicted as a vengeful force, was now portrayed more as a guardian, a protector of the natural order. Kong, on the other hand, was given emotional depth and a quest for self-discovery, a more human-like journey of finding his place in the world. This shift in how kiju are presented was significant not just for fans of the genre, but for broader cultural discourse. In a time when global crises, climate change, political upheaval, and pandemics loom large, the film's exploration of the tension between humanity's need for control and the uncontrollable forces of nature felt particularly timely. The monsters, in their timeless battle for survival, became metaphors for larger, more existential struggles, echoing real-world issues. The idea that power, whether in the form of a massive lizard or a giant ape, comes with responsibility and the need for balance, was an underlying theme that resonated on a deeper level than simple monster violence. Godzilla vs. Kong tapped into the collective anxiety of the modern world, serving as a reflection of humanity's ongoing struggles with the forces that we do not fully understand or control. The Titans, in their fight, were not just battling each other. They were battling the world that humans had shaped around them, a world that had long since outgrown the need for such creatures. For all its thematic complexity, the film was also a celebration of pop culture, blending nostalgia with modern sensibilities. The enduring popularity of Godzilla and King Kong speaks to a deep-seated cultural fascination with the idea of monsters. These creatures are symbols of power, fear, and mystery, but they are also representations of the unknown. By reintroducing these monsters in a way that both honored their legacies and reimagined their roles within the monsterverse, Godzilla vs. Kong tapped into a global fanbase that spans generations. Fans of the original Godzilla films found themselves face-to-face with the same towering creature that had haunted their screens decades ago, while newer fans, perhaps those introduced to the franchise through Kong, Skull Island or Godzilla, King of the Monsters, were treated to a fresh take on the mythos. The movie was able to bridge these generations, creating a sense of shared experience that united fans of all ages. But the film's cultural significance went beyond its effects on cinema and pop culture. It came at a time when global audiences were seeking connection and shared experiences more than ever before. In the wake of a year spent in isolation, Godzilla vs. Kong became more than just a source of entertainment. It became an event, a collective moment that brought people together, whether in theaters, living rooms, or through online discussions. The internet buzzed with debates about who would win the epic fight. Memes of Kong and Godzilla's most iconic moments circulated on social media, and fans speculated about where the monsterverse would go next. The film became part of the collective cultural conversation in a way few other movies could in the fragmented, post-pandemic media landscape. Moreover, the film contributed to the ongoing conversation about the future of cinema in a digital age. By simultaneously releasing on streaming platforms and in theaters, Godzilla vs. Kong demonstrated the viability of hybrid releases for major studio films. This decision was emblematic of the broader shifts in the film industry, where streaming has become an increasingly dominant force, yet the power of the theatrical experience is far from diminished. The movie's success helped prove that large-scale blockbusters could thrive in both formats, with audiences willing to engage in new ways of consuming content without sacrificing the excitement of watching films like this on the big screen. The legacy of Godzilla vs. Kong may ultimately be tied to this very duality, to its place in the new normal of how films are distributed and consumed, reshaping how studios think about releasing future blockbusters in a rapidly changing media environment. In terms of its place in genre filmmaking, the film revitalized the kiju genre in a way that many had thought impossible. While the genre had never truly gone out of style, Godzilla vs. Kong injected new life into the monster movie, making it relevant to contemporary audiences and reinvigorating interest in other kiju films. The success of the movie demonstrated that audiences were hungry for more stories about these larger-than-life creatures. Stories that could go beyond the confines of traditional monster brawls and explore the emotional and philosophical dimensions of these beings. The groundwork laid by Godzilla vs. Kong ensured that the monsterverse would continue, and its influence would extend to future generations of filmmakers eager to explore new ways to tell stories about colossal creatures. Ultimately, Godzilla vs. Kong is a testament to the enduring power of myth. The Titans are no longer just creatures of fear and destruction. They are cultural icons, symbols of larger themes about nature, power, survival, and identity. The film redefined what it means to be a monster movie, blending spectacle with meaningful themes and a sense of shared cultural experience. Its legacy will not be defined merely by its box office numbers or its special effects. It will be remembered for how it captured the imagination of a global audience and tapped into the zeitgeist of the times. In the years to come, Godzilla vs. Kong will likely be seen as a film that not only delivered an epic battle between two legendary monsters, but also resonated with the spirit of the age, leaving behind a lasting mark on the world of cinema and pop culture. In Godzilla vs. Kong, vehicles are used to heighten the sense of chaos and scale, particularly during the scenes of destruction. While the exact number of cars used in the film isn't specified, the movie features a range of vehicles, from military trucks and helicopters to civilian cars caught in the crossfire of the Titans' battles. These vehicles serve not just as props, but as a way to emphasize the immense power of the creatures. The film makes a point of showing how easily the monsters can wreak havoc on human infrastructure, with cars often crushed underfoot or sent flying by the shockwaves of a giant monster's attack. Military vehicles, like tanks and transport trucks, are especially prominent in scenes where Godzilla wreaks havoc on cities, or when military forces attempt to subdue the creatures. These vehicles are often seen trying to maneuver or escape the carnage, their fragile nature contrasted against the overwhelming power of the Titans. In the urban environments where Kong and Godzilla clash, cars are often used as part of the larger destruction, with streets littered with wrecked vehicles and buildings collapsing around them. During Kong's journey through the city, there are moments when cars are visibly tossed aside, emphasizing the contrast between the fragile human world and the Titan's monstrous presence. While the focus is predominantly on the action between the two giants, the cars, like everything else in the film, serve as a backdrop to the larger conflict, further underscoring the scale of the destruction. The total number of vehicles may not be tracked in detail, but the sheer amount of destruction they experience is a key visual element in showcasing the sheer terror and awe that the Titans inspire. Ultimately, the cars are part of a much larger spectacle where human technology and infrastructure seem utterly insignificant in the face of such colossal power. The production cost of Godzilla vs. Kong was reported to be around $200 million. This budget reflects the massive scope of the film, which included cutting-edge visual effects, extensive CGI and motion capture work to bring the Titans to life, and elaborate set pieces, particularly in the climactic battle scenes. Additionally, the cost covered the salaries of the high-profile cast, the development of the elaborate Hollow Earth sequence, and the logistical challenges of shooting large-scale action scenes, some of which were done on green screens with little physical set construction. The budget also had to account for the simultaneous theatrical and streaming release, as Godzilla vs. Kong was released both in theaters and on HBO Max in March 2021, a strategic decision tied to the COVID-19 pandemic. This distribution approach meant significant marketing efforts to ensure both the physical and digital reach of the film, further adding to the overall cost. Despite the large budget, the film performed well, grossing over $467 million worldwide, a solid figure, particularly considering the challenges of the pandemic era when movie theaters were operating at reduced capacity and global lockdowns impacted cinema attendance. The film's success also helped boost the MonsterVerse franchise and reinforced the viability of high-budget blockbuster films even in a shifting landscape where digital platforms have become increasingly dominant. Moreover, the film contributed to the ongoing conversation about the future of cinema in a digital age. By simultaneously releasing on streaming platforms and in theaters, Godzilla vs. Kong demonstrated the viability of hybrid releases for major studio films. This decision was emblematic of the broader shifts in the film industry, where streaming has become an increasingly dominant force, yet the power of the theatrical experience is far from diminished. The movie's success helped prove that large-scale blockbusters could thrive in both formats, with audiences willing to engage in new ways of consuming content without sacrificing the excitement of watching films like this on the big screen. The legacy of Godzilla vs. Kong may ultimately be tied to this very duality, to its place in the new normal of how films are distributed and consumed, reshaping how studios think about releasing future blockbusters in a rapidly changing media environment. In terms of its place in genre filmmaking, the film revitalized the kiju genre in a way that many had thought impossible. While the genre had never truly gone out of style, Godzilla vs. Kong injected new life into the monster movie, making it relevant to contemporary audiences and reinvigorating interest in other kiju films. The success of the movie demonstrated that audiences were hungry for more stories about these larger-than-life creatures. Stories that could go beyond the confines of traditional monster brawls and explore the emotional and philosophical dimensions of these beings. The groundwork laid by Godzilla vs. Kong ensured that the MonsterVerse would continue, and its influence would extend to future generations of filmmakers eager to explore new ways to tell stories about colossal creatures. Ultimately, Godzilla vs. Kong is a testament to the enduring power of myth. The Titans are no longer just creatures of fear and destruction. They are cultural icons, symbols of larger themes about nature, power, survival, and identity. The film redefined what it means to be a monster movie, blending spectacle with meaningful themes and a sense of shared cultural experience. Its legacy will not be defined merely by its box office numbers or its special effects. It will be remembered for how it captured the imagination of a global audience and tapped into the zeitgeist of the times. In the years to come, Godzilla vs. Kong will likely be seen as a film that not only delivered an epic battle between two legendary monsters, but also resonated with the spirit of the age, leaving behind a lasting mark on the world of cinema and pop culture. In Godzilla vs. Kong, vehicles are used to heighten the sense of chaos and scale, particularly during the scenes of destruction. While the exact number of cars used in the film isn't specified, the movie features a range of vehicles, from military trucks and helicopters to civilian cars caught in the crossfire of the Titans' battles. These vehicles serve not just as props, but as a way to emphasize the immense power of the creatures. The film makes a point of showing how easily the monsters can wreak havoc on human infrastructure, with cars often crushed underfoot or sent flying by the shockwaves of a giant monster's attack. Military vehicles, like tanks and transport trucks, are especially prominent in scenes where Godzilla wreaks havoc on cities, or when military forces attempt to subdue the creatures. These vehicles are often seen trying to maneuver or escape the carnage, their fragile nature contrasted against the overwhelming power of the Titans. In the urban environments where Kong and Godzilla clash, cars are often used as part of the larger destruction, with streets littered with wrecked vehicles and buildings collapsing around them. During Kong's journey through the city, There are moments when cars are visibly tossed aside, emphasizing the contrast between the fragile human world and the Titan's monstrous presence. While the focus is predominantly on the action between the two giants, the cars, like everything else in the film, serve as a backdrop to the larger conflict, further underscoring the scale of the destruction. The total number of vehicles may not be tracked in detail, but the sheer amount of destruction they experience is a key visual element in showcasing the sheer terror and awe that the Titans inspire. Ultimately, the cars are part of a much larger spectacle where human technology and infrastructure seem utterly insignificant in the face of such colossal power. The production cost of Godzilla vs. Kong was reported to be around $200 million. This budget reflects the massive scope of the film, which included cutting-edge visual effects, extensive CGI and motion capture work to bring the Titans to life, and elaborate set pieces, particularly in the climactic battle scenes. Additionally, the cost covered the salaries of the high-profile cast, the development of the elaborate Hollow Earth sequence, and the logistical challenges of shooting large-scale action scenes, some of which were done on green screens with little physical set construction. The budget also had to account for the simultaneous theatrical and streaming release, as Godzilla vs. Kong was released both in theaters and on HBO Max in March 2021, a strategic decision tied to the COVID-19 pandemic. This distribution approach meant significant marketing efforts to ensure both the physical and digital reach of the film, further adding to the overall cost. Despite the large budget, the film performed well, grossing over $467 million worldwide, a solid figure, particularly considering the challenges of the pandemic era when movie theaters were operating at reduced capacity and global lockdowns impacted cinema attendance. The film's success also helped boost the MonsterVerse franchise and reinforced the viability of high-budget blockbuster films even in a shifting landscape where digital platforms have become increasingly dominant. The exact total price of all the cars used in Godzilla vs. Kong isn't publicly detailed, as it's not a standard piece of production information. However, we can make some estimates based on the types of cars featured in the film and the typical costs involved in a movie production involving vehicles. The movie features a wide range of vehicles, from civilian cars to military-grade trucks, tanks, and specialized transport vehicles. Here's a breakdown of the general types of vehicles and their estimated costs. 1. Civilian cars. These would include everyday vehicles like sedans, SUVs, and small trucks. The cost of these vehicles would vary, but for standard models, mid-range sedans or SUVs can cost anywhere from $20,000 to $50,000 depending on the make and model. Specialty or luxury cars seen in some scenes could go as high as $100,000 or more. Given that there are many civilian vehicles used in destruction sequences, you could estimate that the total cost for these cars would likely be in the range of $1 million to $3 million, considering the large number that were likely destroyed or heavily damaged during filming. 2. Military vehicles. These vehicles include tanks, transport trucks, armored vehicles, and specialized military equipment. The costs for these are significantly higher, especially when considering real-world military-grade vehicles. A military transport truck might cost between $200,000 and $500,000. Military tanks or armored vehicles can range from $5 million to $10 million depending on the type and whether they are actual military vehicles or replicas built for the film. The production likely used a combination of real military vehicles, which would be rented for the film, and replicas made for specific sequences. This portion of the vehicle budget could easily reach $5 million to $10 million or more. 3. Specialty and exotic vehicles. In some scenes, there may be high-end cars or futuristic, custom-made vehicles that contribute to the film's look. These types of vehicles tend to be expensive, with costs varying based on design, technology, and customization. For a few featured specialty vehicles, the price could range from $100,000 to $500,000. 4. Destruction costs. The destruction of cars in the movie plays a major role in the visual spectacle, especially during the city-storming battles. These cars, often damaged by explosions, crushing, or collisions, are sometimes provided by production companies specializing in creating cars that are made to be destroyed on film. The cost of these specially modified cars would vary, but it's not uncommon for the destruction of a car to cost between $1,000 to $10,000 per car, depending on the complexity and the effects required. If we were to estimate the total cost of the cars used in the movie, factoring in civilian vehicles, military vehicles, specialty cars, and the destruction elements, it's reasonable to suggest that the total might range between $10 million and $20 million for the vehicles alone. This includes the cost of renting and acquiring the vehicles, as well as the budget for destruction, special effects, and safety measures during filming. While the exact figures are difficult to pinpoint without detailed production breakdowns, this range would be a fair estimate based on industry norms for large-scale blockbuster films with significant vehicular destruction. In Godzilla vs. Kong, the cars used on screen span a wide range of costs, depending on the type and purpose of the vehicle. Many of the cars seen in the film were chosen to serve as part of the massive destruction that accompanies the Titans' battles, but some are much more expensive than others. The military vehicles, including tanks and armored transport trucks, are among the most expensive vehicles in the film. For example, the M1 Abrams tank, which is used in some of the more intense military sequences, can cost between $8 million and $10 million per unit. These military-grade vehicles are crucial to the scenes where the human forces attempt to engage the monsters, showcasing the stark contrast between human weaponry and the immense power of Godzilla and Kong. Alongside these military behemoths, there are high-end civilian vehicles that make an appearance, often as part of the urban chaos that erupts during the Titans' rampages. For instance, luxury SUVs like the Toyota Land Cruiser or Ford F-150 Raptor, which are known for their durability and off-road capabilities, can cost anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000 each. These cars, while not as costly as military vehicles, are still on the higher end of the civilian vehicle spectrum and often appear in scenes where the characters are navigating the chaotic environments or where the vehicles themselves are involved in destruction. The film also features standard luxury sedans like the Mercedes-Benz S-Class or BMW 7 Series, which could cost between $80,000 and $130,000, depending on the model and trim. These vehicles are typically used in scenes featuring high-status characters or set in sophisticated environments, although many of these are shown getting caught in the crossfire of the monster battles. As for the special effects vehicles, those modified or custom-built specifically for the stunts or destruction scenes, these can be very costly. Custom-built vehicles, which are designed to survive heavy impacts, explosions, and other cinematic destructions, can range from $200,000 to $500,000 or more, depending on the complexity of the modifications required. In terms of sheer expense, the military tanks and armored vehicles are the most expensive cars featured in the film. These military vehicles are used for several intense action scenes, particularly when the military tries and fails to take down Godzilla. Their cost reflects not only their advanced technology but also the scale and durability required for the destruction sequences. The destruction itself also adds another layer of cost to the vehicles in the film. Many cars are purposely destroyed or damaged during the Titanic battles, especially in scenes where buildings and city streets are crushed underfoot or blasted by atomic breath. For the purpose of destruction, specially modified vehicles are often used, with each vehicle costing anywhere from $1,000 to $10,000 to make it suitable for cinematic destruction. This expense is part of the broader effort to create a sense of realism in the destruction, showing how easily the Titans can topple human infrastructure. While the civilian vehicles and military trucks may be costly, the film's most expensive vehicles are the tanks, armored vehicles, and custom-built cars designed specifically for the destruction sequences. All told, the cost of the vehicles in Godzilla vs. Kong likely ranges from the more affordable civilian models to the multi-million-dollar military and specialty vehicles, with the total cost likely running into the millions when accounting for all the cars used and destroyed throughout the film. In Godzilla vs. Kong, the most expensive elements of the production stem from the film's massive visual effects, the creation of the Titans themselves, and the sophisticated technology used to bring them to life. The costliest part of the film is undoubtedly the CGI and visual effects, which are essential to the film's appeal, as the Titans themselves are entirely computer-generated. These effects require cutting-edge technology, immense computing power, and a highly skilled team of animators, visual effects artists, and motion capture specialists. The budget allocated for the visual effects would likely run into the hundreds of millions of dollars across the entire franchise, with Godzilla vs. Kong standing as one of the most visually ambitious films in the monsterverse. A significant portion of the budget also went into the creation of the monsters themselves, which included not only the CGI but also the motion capture and digital modeling required to make Kong and Godzilla feel tangible and lifelike. The technology used to render Godzilla's massive, detailed scales, and the fluidity of Kong's movements, particularly in scenes where he is engaging in physical combat or using objects as weapons, is extraordinarily expensive. Each monster had to be designed from the ground up, ensuring that they felt distinct from their previous portrayals while still retaining the essence of their iconic forms. This kind of CGI work is notoriously expensive, with some estimates for high-quality visual effects like these reaching $150 million to $200 million. The Hollow Earth sequence is another extremely costly aspect of the movie. The highly complex, otherworldly setting required advanced CGI and artistic design to create an entirely new environment that felt vast, alien, and visually stunning. This sequence alone would have contributed a significant portion to the film's total production cost, particularly with the level of detail and realism required for the landscapes and gravity-defying action. The special effects involving explosions, destruction, and the dynamic battle scenes between Godzilla and Kong are also very costly. The sheer amount of destruction, both physical and digital, demands a lot of specialized equipment and set design. Even though a good portion of the destruction was digitally created, there were still numerous practical effects, including the controlled demolition of set pieces and the use of miniatures for some of the more intricate destruction shots. These special effects, combined with the cost of creating realistic and massive monster fights, are integral to the film's appeal and account for a huge portion of the budget. In addition to CGI, the cast and crew salaries are a major component of the cost. With big names like Alexander Skarsgård, Millie Bobby Brown, and Rebecca Hall involved, along with a seasoned production crew, these expenses would be substantial. While not necessarily the most expensive aspect compared to CGI or special effects, the salaries of the principal and supporting cast would still have been a significant factor in the movie's overall budget. Lastly, the sound design and music, especially the score by Tom Hokenborg, Junkie XL, also played an important role in elevating the film's impact. Crafting the massive soundscapes that accompany each battle between Godzilla and Kong, not to mention the subtle audio cues that evoke tension, adds an intricate layer of cost that complements the visual spectacle. The integration of sound with the visual effects is not just about capturing monster roars and destruction. It's about creating an immersive experience, which requires cutting-edge technology and expert sound engineering. In sum, while various elements like the cast, sets, and practical effects contributed to the overall production cost, the most expensive aspects of Godzilla vs. Kong revolve around the visual effects, particularly the creation of the Titans and the otherworldly settings, as well as the cutting-edge CGI required to bring those elements to life. These technological investments, combined with the associated costs for sound, destruction, and massive scale, make the film one of the priciest in the MonsterVerse franchise. Godzilla vs. Kong was shot in a variety of locations, both natural and controlled, to create the visually immersive experience the film is known for. A significant portion of the movie was filmed in the Hawaiian Islands, particularly on the islands of Oahu and Kauai. The lush, tropical landscapes provided the perfect backdrop for Skull Island, Kong's home. These natural settings were enhanced with visual effects to craft the mythical and dangerous world where Kong resides. The towering cliffs and dense forests of Hawaii contributed to the immersive feeling of being in a vast, untamed world. In addition to Hawaii, much of the production took place in Queensland, Australia, specifically on the Gold Coast. Queensland's diverse landscapes allowed the filmmakers to capture everything from dense jungles to futuristic cityscapes. The region's facilities also provided ample space for large-scale sets and visual effects work. The area's favorable production environment made it an ideal location for the intense action sequences that dominate the film. Queensland's versatility as a filming location played a huge role in bringing the massive battles between the Titans to life, especially when combined with extensive green screen work. A significant amount of the film was also shot on sound stages and with green screen technology. These controlled environments were essential for creating the larger-than-life moments of the movie, particularly the massive fights between Kong and Godzilla, as well as the scenes set in the digital environments like Hollow Earth. While the exterior shots in natural locations gave the film a grounded sense of realism, the battles and fantastical realms were largely brought to life through CGI and motion capture, filmed on soundstages equipped with cutting-edge technology. Some interior shots and more contained scenes were filmed in Los Angeles, where many blockbuster films go for post-production work, set design, and small-scale shoots. Los Angeles provided the infrastructure needed for the more intimate, dialogue-heavy moments between the characters, which helped balance out the epic scale of the creature battles with human-driven storylines. Additionally, Vancouver, Canada, saw some filming, particularly for scenes set in high-tech, futuristic environments. Vancouver's architecture and the availability of production facilities made it an ideal spot for certain aspects of the movie, particularly those that involved technologically advanced settings or smaller-scale action. Finally, while the Hollow Earth sequence wasn't filmed in any physical location, it was one of the most important parts of the movie. The otherworldly landscape was entirely created with CGI, using a blend of green screen and motion capture. The crew used this entirely digital space to depict Kong's journey to an ancient, alien world beneath the Earth's surface. This part of the movie, while not rooted in any real-world location, required immense creative input to construct a vibrant, visually captivating world. Together, these varied filming locations, ranging from natural landscapes in Hawaii to the soundstages in Australia and the digital worlds created in post-production, helped make Godzilla vs. Kong the grand, visually stunning spectacle that it is. The seamless blend of real-world filming with cutting-edge CGI and digital landscapes allowed the filmmakers to craft the epic scale of the movie while maintaining a grounded sense of realism. Godzilla vs. Kong performed strongly at the American box office, especially given the challenging circumstances of the COVID-19 pandemic, which impacted global cinema revenues in 2021. The film was released in theaters on March 24, 2021, and simultaneously made available on HBO Max for streaming in the United States. Despite the ongoing pandemic and the mixed impact on theater-going behavior, the movie managed to achieve impressive numbers in the domestic market. The film grossed $99.3 million at the domestic, US and Canada, box office during its theatrical run. This was a significant achievement, especially when compared to other films released during the same period, many of which saw lower box office returns due to pandemic-related restrictions and theater closures. Godzilla vs. Kong became one of the highest-grossing films of 2021 in the United States, underscoring the continued appeal of the monsterverse and the long-standing popularity of the iconic kiju characters. Its opening weekend was particularly strong, with the movie earning $32.2 million over its first 3 days in theaters, marking the best opening for a film in the MonsterVerse series at that time. This was a remarkable result, especially considering that many theaters were still operating at reduced capacity, and a significant portion of the audience chose to stream the film at home through the HBO Max platform. Ultimately, the film's success at the American box office helped it become a commercial hit worldwide, where it grossed a total of $467.9 million globally. The strong domestic performance was bolstered by its impressive international numbers as well, but the US market played a crucial role in the movie's financial success. The film's box office performance was seen as a positive sign for the future of theatrical releases, particularly for blockbuster films. As audiences gradually returned to theaters post-pandemic, Godzilla vs. Kong is a cinematic spectacle that blends iconic characters, awe-inspiring battles, and visually stunning landscapes into a thrilling package that captivates both longtime fans of the kiju genre and newcomers alike. From its opening scenes to its epic conclusion, the movie delivers a relentless ride, marked by fierce confrontations and heart-pounding moments that leave audiences on the edge of their seats. Whether you're there to witness the legendary clash between two of the most famous creatures in film history or to immerse yourself in the cutting-edge visual effects that bring these titans to life, Godzilla vs. Kong is a reminder of the enduring power of storytelling and cinematic spectacle. The movie's success lies not just in its action sequences, but in the way it taps into the legacy of both Godzilla and King Kong. These monsters, whose stories have been told for decades, are more than just giant creatures battling it out. They represent different facets of humanity's relationship with nature, power, and destruction. Godzilla, the ancient Leviathan, symbolizes the catastrophic forces of nature, while Kong, the tragic and misunderstood giant, represents strength in vulnerability and the fight for survival. Their clash in this film is not just about who is stronger, but about reconciling these immense forces in a world that has been irrevocably changed by their existence. Visually, the film is a marvel. Every frame feels meticulously crafted, from the detailed rendering of Godzilla's scales to the expressive movements of Kong. The scenes that showcase the two monsters in full combat are nothing short of breathtaking. Whether it's Kong leaping from skyscraper to skyscraper or Godzilla unleashing his atomic breath with terrifying precision, the filmmakers make sure to give audiences a front-row seat to the chaos, all while keeping the stakes high and the drama palpable. The technology behind these scenes is groundbreaking, allowing the filmmakers to seamlessly blend CGI with real-world environments, creating a sense of realism that immerses the viewer in the world of these titans. But it's not all about the monsters. The human characters, while playing a secondary role to the kiju spectacle, bring an essential layer of emotional depth to the story. The film's human protagonists, scientists, conspiracy theorists, and soldiers, are not mere bystanders to the action. They are integral to the plot. Their connection to the monsters adds stakes and motivation to the massive battles that unfold. Characters like Dr. Nathan Lind, played by Alexander Skarsgård, and Dr. Eileen Andrews, portrayed by Rebecca Hall, are key to the progression of the story, offering intelligence and perspective that explain the Titans' behavior, as well as their potential to either destroy or save humanity. The concept of Hollow Earth, introduced in the film, serves as both a narrative tool and a visual marvel. It is a world beneath the Earth's surface where ancient beings like Kong might have originated, offering an intriguing explanation for the origin of the monsters. This otherworldly realm is one of the movie's most spectacular feats, brought to life through innovative CGI that creates a sense of wonder and excitement. Hollow Earth is a place where the laws of physics seem to bend, with gravity-defying landscapes and surreal vistas that stretch the imagination. It's a setting that feels at once ancient and futuristic, providing an exciting backdrop for Kong's journey, and offering a potential glimpse into the larger mythology that the monsterverse continues to build. At its heart, Godzilla vs. Kong is a film about balance, about reconciling the forces of nature, technology, and humanity. It's about understanding that sometimes the greatest threats to our world come not from the monsters we can see, but from those we don't fully understand. In this movie, we see how humanity's desire to control these ancient creatures often leads to catastrophic consequences. But ultimately, the film suggests that we must find a way to coexist with the forces of nature, rather than trying to subdue them completely. The climactic battles aren't just about physical strength but about finding common ground and realizing that these titans, despite their destructive power, are part of a larger, more fragile balance. The movie's pacing is another strong point, keeping audiences hooked from start to finish. Even with the massive action sequences and visual effects-heavy moments, the film never loses sight of its characters or its narrative. There are moments of humor, emotion, and suspense that provide balance to the intense action, ensuring that the audience is always invested in the story. The sound design is also worth noting, as it amplifies the spectacle with every roar, crash, and explosion. The music, composed by Tom Hokenborg, Junkie XL, helps elevate the tension and drama, adding a layer of emotional resonance to the action. The critical and commercial reception of Godzilla vs. Kong also speaks to its success. It performed exceptionally well at the global box office, becoming one of the highest-grossing films of 2021, and earned praise for its breathtaking visuals, larger-than-life battles, and effective use of visual effects. Audiences flocked to theaters to see the iconic monsters collide, and for many, the experience of watching these titans on the big screen was nothing short of unforgettable. As we look back on Godzilla vs. Kong, it's clear that this film has cemented its place in the monsterverse as one of the franchise's most exciting and visually ambitious entries. It's a film that delivers on every front: action, spectacle, and even emotional depth. It's a celebration of the enduring legacy of two of cinema's most iconic characters, brought together for a confrontation that is as much about understanding as it is about destruction.